Guys, the NBA season is in full swing, and what better way to enhance your game day watching experience than with Underdog Fantasy? It's super easy to play. It's as simple as picking higher or lower on players' stats. You can win payouts from everything from the NBA to the NFL playoffs and even the Australian Open. You play fantasy sports anyway, why not get paid for it? Minnesota is an eligible state, as you can see on the map on screen. Use our promo code TWolves and use the link in the description and get a free pick and up to $1,000 in bonus cash. That's a free pick just for signing up. Again, that's promo code TWolves and use the link in the description when you sign up. And thanks to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring the video. Welcome in to another Running with the Timberwolves podcast on the Believe Sports Network. My name is Gabe Anderson, and I'm joined, as always, by Chris Emerson. Chris, how we doing?
We're doing okay. We're in the middle of a little bit of a up and down part of our year, but we're doing okay.
Yeah, and to get right into it, how many more of these close ones can we afford to let slip through our fingertips? I don't think that many, because I think the rest of the Western Conference is starting to figure it out. The Kings are starting to figure out. I think the Suns have something up their sleeve where they're starting to figure out, and maybe they get the likes of Jimmy Butler as well. I'm just saying, wins against the Washington Wizards and the like are nice. They're good for the win column. But you got to remember that other teams are going to play the Wizards too and most likely beat them.
Right.
So a win versus, let's say, for example, the Nuggets or Dallas or the
Grizzlies,
another team like the Knicks, those mean a lot more than a win against the Wizards.
Yeah, and we're number one in clutch time games by a decent margin. I mean, we've had most of our games have come down to the end of the fourth quarter, where usually we're losing currently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So a little bit of some bad news, some good news on this podcast as well coming. But I do want to mention, make sure to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube and give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple. And check out Underdog Fantasy as well. You can use the link in the description and use the promo code TWolves to get some free goodies as well. So check out Underdog Fantasy. So let's get right into it. Dante DiVincenzo out indefinitely. Now, we saw him get hurt in that Warriors game. That's another game that we let slip, that Warriors game as well. We saw him get hurt in that Warriors game, and we didn't know how bad it was because I think he's continued to play in that game. Turns out he's got a bad toe. I mean, how big of a loss is this for the Wolves? He was just starting to get going.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's huge because he was really starting to play as maybe our second best player. And I mean, he was really was what we needed to add a little punch to our starting lineup. And it's one of those things where sometimes a loss can be good because it gives another guy moments, but for the actual production on our roster, it was a pretty huge loss.
Right. I agree. And as much as I love Mike Conley, I love everything Mike Conley's done here. He's been a model soldier for the Wolves. He's been a great mentor to guys like Dillingham. He's been a great mentor to Nickeil Alexander-Walker as well. I'm sorry, I don't think he is a starting point guard in today's NBA. I really don't think so. At his age and how much wear and tear is on his body and his production level, I think he's taken a major regression this year, and I don't think he's the answer at starting point guard for the Wolves. And now I know you like to say that the Wolves love analytics and stuff like that, but I don't know, man. Conley ain't it right now. And particularly when you're not getting much production from Rudy Gobert offensively. Maybe the outlier on that is the Cavs game. You can't have two starters and sometimes Jaden that aren't giving you anything offensively.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, they said that his wrist was bad in the beginning of the year and it was something he was just going to play with. That might be part of it. I know last year he was the number 2 by percentage 3-point shooter in the league at like, low 40s, mid 40s. He's shooting like 37% right now on real kind of low volume. So he's not even he's not doing anything. Like, you need to do something. Like,
Right.
moving the ball is nice. Hockey assists are nice, but when we have guys like Anthony Randall or Anthony,
Oh, I
but like,
wish.
yeah, like Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle, who like to play some iso ball and collapse the defense. If the guys that we're kicking it to aren't hitting those shots, it's going to be not very effective. And we've been seeing that as a pretty bad consistent thing that we've been doing.
Right. I mean, Mike Conley for the year, not terrible, only 37% from three, but he hasn't been asked to shoot that many. He had a nice stretch against the Knicks and the Cavs where he went 6 for 11. But other than that, he's been pretty bad from behind the 3-point line. Then you throw on Jaden, who hasn't been playing well either. And this comes to my main point. With how good he's been playing, I think that Naz Reid deserves a starting spot on this team. I think it's about time because the last couple games, Julius Randle, and I know you're going to be quick to defend him, which is fine, but he has just been absolute garbage the last couple games. I'm sorry. Scoring, yes. 5 points against Memphis, 8 points against the Knicks. Now 20 points against Cleveland, okay. Almost a triple-double in that one. But here's the big stat. In his last 5 games, 10.5% from three. Yep. He's hit 2 threes on about 28 attempts.
Yep.
That's not getting the job done. And I know, I'm sorry to make the comparison to Karl Anthony Towns, but that was something Karl Anthony Towns did well, was just stand on the perimeter, get the ball, put up the three, and make it. But I'm sorry, but it seems like Julius Randle's 3-point shot is broken right now.
It's for sure broken. And the way that we're using him on offense is getting him that ball at the 3-point line often, I will say in the last 2 games versus Memphis and Cleveland, he had 7 assists versus Memphis, 1 turnover. He had 9 assists in Cleveland. Both games, he had 11, 14 rebounds. Even the Knicks game, he had 7 boards, 6 assists. So, I mean, he's doing other things other than scoring. But when you don't have guys that can score other than him or Anthony Edwards,
right,
you need him to score. So, right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if moving Naz into the starting lineup would really solve that much. I mean, to give him a couple more minutes maybe, because, I mean, we're still going to need 25 minutes out of Randle. The problem is if the shot's not falling, the shot's not falling, unless we do something where we move Rudy out of the starting lineup, but I don't know how that would affect our D. There's definitely things that need to be juggled because we're not looking great, and I was talking just a second ago about Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle. Both those guys are pretty on the top, like 30 in the NBA in isolation possessions. I think Anthony Edwards is 5th in isolations of possessions or something like that. But the points per possession, which is what matters the most, Anthony Edwards is terrible. He's one of the worst, and he's the worst in the top 30, I think, other than Julius Randle. So we have the 2 worst players in isolation offense, that are really being ISO players. So that's not good. Our offense is not working right now. And unfortunately, Dante was a big spark to that offense and was really making us kind of hum for a little bit there. And now he's gone. So, it's getting ugly. I still hope that, a couple of practices after, during the All-Star break might help us get some flow back going. Remember, Dante and Randle showed up one day before our first preseason game. The trade happened. So these guys really didn't have an off season. We didn't get to work our offense around their talents. It just kind of threw them in there. We'll see what happens, but something needs to change because we're not looking great.
Well, I'll rebuttal one point that you made there. Yes, I understand that Dante and Julius showed up a day before training camp. But shoe on the other foot, so did Cat, and he's been balling at
but what
in
does
New
Cat
York.
do? What does Cat do on offense?
Shoots threes, and he
he stands at the 3-point line. Another guy gets him open, and they kick it to him to shoot. It's a lot different than having a guy being the distributor, being the play creator, being the guy who does all that. Like Cat's role on the team is really pretty simple. Hit open threes, and he's hitting them for his credit. So that's never going to go bad. He's going to be able to shoot open threes until he's 55 years old. But we are asking Randall to be, like I said, he's had 7, 9, 6 assists the last 3 games. We're asking him to be our lead playmaker. That's a lot harder to do, coming off the street than stand and hit open threes. But again, Cat has been playing well.
He has, and all credit to Cat as well.
Yeah.
And like we mentioned, we don't want to live in the past too much, but I do want to say one more thing about the Cat trade is we made that trade, and Tim Connolly had to have known. We made that trade not trying to be better this year because
Correct.
Randall and DiVincenzo are not going to make your team this year a better team than with just Cat and the pre-established chemistry. That move was made as a long-term move to clear up salary. And I know a lot of people know that. But to be better, just straight up, try to win a championship this year, that move was not made to try to be better.
Especially in the first couple months, I will say that. Who knows what will happen? I still think, there's a lot of season left. These guys have a lot of games to play together. Like I said, All-Star break, they'll get to, actually maybe install some offense. Look at what Julius Randle did effectively for New York last year and maybe try to put some of that into what we're doing. But yeah, if you've got 9 years of running an offense around Karl Anthony Towns, he's going to be pretty comfortable in that offense, a lot more than coming in, trying to run Karl Anthony Towns offense with a guy who's not Karl Anthony Towns.
Right. I agree with that. And another thing I will say, just to pivot a little bit here, is Chris Finch's late game drawing up plays for the final possessions has been awful this year. We had the one against, 2 against Memphis. The first one where they gave the ball to Randall, and Randall just stood there with the ball and then eventually got it to Ant, and he threw up like a fadeaway 36-footer, which wasn't even close. Then we had last night as well, where throw it in the backcourt to Ant and get him double teamed and have him throw up a fadeaway 3 at the end of regulation that had no chance to go in. Is the problem Chris Finch drawing up plays, or is the problem execution, or is it Ant and the rest of the team not running the plays?
Well, if you listen to Chris Finch, it's the latter. It's Anthony Edwards and those guys not executing correctly. Chris Finch said that play was drawn up for him to get the ball and go downhill, to be attacking the rim. That was the plan. Anthony Edwards had a different plan. He wanted to jack a contested fadeaway 3. And just a little FYI, Anthony Edwards is 0 for 12 on go-ahead game-tying field goal attempts in the final 5 seconds or in overtime in his career. 0 for 12. So maybe he's not the guy yet. He's still young. I think sometimes we force it to him believing that he's this polished superstar, and he's not. He's still young. He's still figuring out. He's a great scorer, but, maybe drop a better play to get somebody else the ball. Maybe use him as a decoy. I don't know. I don't know if that steps on toes of a future superstar or how that works, but we're at the point now where I don't really care if Anthony Edwards gets mad. Taking that sort of shot is not acceptable. Even if it goes in, that's not a good shot. Or the kill shot, as Jim P likes to say. Anthony Edwards loves to run to that, the longest shot, the longest 3-pointer you can from the break and shoot that right at the corner. But, he made 1 or 2, but now he's been missing a bunch. So we have to do better. Anthony Edwards has to move the ball. He has to trust his teammates. And we have to play better team basketball because, like I illustrated, ISO basketball, we're terrible at, and
Right.
noticeably terrible. So sooner or later, something's got to give. I don't know what it's going to be, if it's going to be Chris Finch or Anthony Edwards playing Chris Finch's style, but we have to start moving the ball.
So let me get this straight. So you are not an advocate for getting rid of Chris Finch at this point?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I remember last year, Anthony Edwards and a lot of our players were very vocal of saying, all we have to do is what the coaches tell us and we win, but we're not doing what the coaches tell us. We're not running the game plan. You would listen to the after losses, and they'd say, we're playing too much hero ball. We're not, they put us in the right position and we don't do the right things.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard that so much this year. I don't know if that's different, but I mean, a coach can only do so much when he's standing on the sideline. If you get a guy, there's a real thirst for isolation basketball amongst superstars, and it's something I've been afraid of with Anthony Edwards. Same thing happened with LeBron James. Like, he got David Blatt, who was known as a pass first, move the ball, team ball kind of guy from the EuroLeague, and he hated it because he wanted to be an ISO, give me the ball, let me do everything kind of guy, and he got that coach fired. So once these superstars start playing a lot of ISO basketball, it's hard for them to give up the ball. And I understand that because everyone wants to be the star, but it's not leading to wins right now. So something's going to have to change. I don't know what it is. I'm not saying Chris Finch needs to go quite yet, because who are you going to bring in that's different?
Right.
And is that guy going to be able to be like, get into a system of ball movement that hasn't been there in the past? I doubt it. We'll see, but it's not working.
Right. And I'll say this. If you are going a different direction than Chris Finch, because let's take a history lesson back. Last time the Wolves went to the Western Conference Finals, the year after, Flip Saunders got traded around the trade deadline, replaced by Kevin McHale, who actually they had a better record the second half of the season, still didn't make the playoffs, and then they didn't have a winning record for years after that, for almost 12 years after that. So you don't want to repeat that. But if we are going to keep Julius Randle at this point, if we are going to keep him at the trade deadline, you need a coach. If you are getting a new coach, you got to find a coach that has a plan for the pieces involved right now, who has a plan for Julius Randle. Now, I know that Chris Finch believes in Julius Randle. He's been very vocal about that, but you need a step-by-step plan of how a Julius Randle, Anthony Edwards team is going to work. Or maybe the answer is trade Randle and start over a little bit. I know there were lingerings of Jordan Poole, which I don't know about that, but what do you think? I mean, something's got to give here, because you don't want to waste too many years with a generational talent, because as Wolves fans know, those do not come around that often. Only two in this franchise's history, 30-year history, two out of how many draft picks? Like 50 of them that we've had, only two, maybe even more, maybe 75 out of 75 players, we've had two generational talents that we drafted.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what you believe in with Chris Finch. Like, do you believe he's a better offensive basketball coach than, let's say, Tom Thibodeau? I would say probably, So with Jalen Brunson and a Tom Thibodeau run offense last year, Julius Randle went for 25 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. Year before that, he went for 25 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists. That's the numbers he was putting up consistently. There's no reason, I would assume, that his fall off would be that huge. But you said something important, like we need a guy who can use whatever skill set he has, wherever he's the most effective. You need to find that and put that in our offense. And I want Timberwolves fans to really remember this. The trade happened a day before the first preseason game. Nothing that Julius Randle is good at has been installed in our offense before the season. It just couldn't have been. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Chris Finch didn't know Julius Randle was coming here. You know, it's not like this was a trade like the Kevin Love for Wiggins trade where we knew it was happening for months before it happened. This just happened, and all of a sudden we've got our new maybe sixth man, seventh man, or I guess I will say now we've got, what is it, 60% of our starters or 40% of our starters showed up the day before the first preseason game. That's hard to get installed into a whole new offense, a whole new system. So it's possible Chris Finch is the guy that'll be able to unlock all that. It's just he needs time. We're probably at about 120 days that these guys have been in Minnesota. Karl-Anthony Towns was here for 9 years. It's understandable that the offense was moving more smooth with Karl-Anthony Towns than Julius Randle at this point. So we'll see. The trade deadline is right at the All-Star break. I would be surprised if we move Julius Randle just because of the constraints that we have being in the second apron. There's probably about 3 or 4 players in the entire NBA that we could trade for to make this work. And it has to be 2 people looking to tango on that. So it would be interesting. But then if that happens, again, assume that we get a pretty quality player back. We're also not going to have offense set up for him. So the second half is going to be equally as clunky. I think part of it is we just don't have, we have some pretty glaring holes in our starting lineup that aren't contributing to the levels that they need to be. I don't think one guy is the complete problem.
Right. And I agree with that. So my counter to that is maybe send off multiple people at the trade deadline. Maybe send off Conley and then promote. I'm not sure if he's ready yet, but maybe promote Rob Dillingham to the starting lineup and just go young. Maybe go completely young. I don't know if you want to go crazy young, but you could. We don't
have our draft pick. Remember, we don't have our draft pick this year.
Yeah, I know that.
If we start a 6'1", 170-pound 19-year-old at point guard, we're going to be drafting in the top 10, or Utah will be drafting in the top 10. I mean, it will be terrible on defense, I would assume, unless he's some sort of spark that is rarely seen in the NBA that early.
Or trade away Conley and start maybe.
We'll have to do something.
I don't know. I don't
know how long Dante is out either. Dante, hopefully, I mean, I know it's a foot thing and they said indefinitely, but that's a made up term. There's no real timetable for indefinitely.
Right.
So hopefully he can be back fairly soon, in a week or so. And maybe that'll because him and Randall were starting to look real nice together before he went down.
Right. All I know is right now it's not working, and I think a lot of it has to come down to late game execution, and we're not getting it done when it matters most. And it's
well, I hope it doesn't get to late game. That's the problem. We're the number 1 team in not getting the job done up until the late game. We can. Right. It is not illegal to be up by 10 points when it comes to late game time when it doesn't matter. That is still officially okay in the NBA. We don't have to squander away a lead so that it's a 5-point game with 2 minutes left.
Where are you on, and we were talking about Chris Finch and late game execution. So the Wolves going on somewhat of a run against the Memphis Grizzlies yesterday. They're up 5 with 4 minutes left to go. And they decide to take out a guy who's hot in Rob Dillingham for Mike Conley. And then Memphis goes on, a 9-0 run, maybe even 11-0 run to take the lead. And Chris Finch was asked about it after the game. He basically said he went with the experience in Mike Conley. But I don't know, man. The guy's hot. He's making a difference. It's the guy you want to see go further. And progress, and you're watching progress in front of our eyes, and you put in the slowness of Mike Conley. Now, I'm not saying that Mike Conley is the reason we lost this game because, we gave him some bad free throws, like the Nas's kind of block. Well, it should have probably been a block into a 3-point play. and then or on the three-pointer, and then the foul in the backcourt. I mean, that's where you basically let them back into the game. But, man, I don't know. I would have kept Rob Dillingham, who's been playing awesome lately.
I agree. I
would have kept him in the game. I mean, just look at his stats from his last 3 games. Against New York, 9 points on 50% from 3, 66% shooting. Cleveland, 12 points on 50% shooting, 50% from 3. Against Memphis, 15 points on 75% shooting and 75% from 3. You got to keep the hot hands in the game.
Well, and more importantly, he's another guy that adds some pressure to the defense. Like when Mike Conley's out there, the defense doesn't care. You know, like when Jaden McDaniels is standing in the corner, the defense doesn't care. You know, when Rudy Gobert is out there, the defense doesn't care. So all they do is box and elbows. They make sure they're packing it in when Julius Randle has a ball or when Anthony Edwards has a ball, which is why they're so bad in ISO right now is there's nobody else that they give a damn about on defense. So, yeah, I think Dillingham needs to be out there because he adds some aggression. He adds somebody who's actually trying to score the basketball. Those other guys aren't. Like Jaden is finally hitting some shots now, but not really. Like we all get excited when he scores 12 points. Like that's terrible. I'm going to put it out here. That's terrible. Like we need more. Like Rudy Gobert had 1 game because we're finally feeding him, but like he's not an offensive player. He never has been. Don't expect him to be because he's not. And with Mike Conley giving us nothing, you know, you can't expect 2 guys to take on an NBA defense this year. These like modern NBA, you know, they just won't allow it, and they shouldn't allow it. Like Anthony Edwards is number 1 on being blitzed when we're on a pick and roll. So someone sets a pick, Anthony Edwards comes off, they send 2 guys screaming at him. Anthony Edwards isn't matured enough as a basketball player to learn how to get off that ball very well. So it's been sloppy and ugly. But part of the reason is we have no one else they care about to defend. So, yeah, we need to start putting pressure on defenses. And Mike Conley, like you said, he needs to maybe maybe get some therapy on that wrist for a couple weeks. And let's see Dillingham with 25, 30 minutes a game and see what happens. We're at the point now where without DiVincenzo, we need something. And, you know, you got to play every card you have.
I totally agree. And one thing that I just want to throw out there, and this isn't really what we're talking about, but I want to throw it out there, is I am sick, and maybe this has been festering for a few years, but I am sick of Rudy Gobert and his lack of offensive abilities. And I'll explain why. He goes to set a pick, right? The double comes hedging on Ant. So 2 guys on Ant. Ant throws it to Gobert a little bit in front of him. I'm sorry, Gobert is not a good enough pick and roll partner to dissect the defense because his only real move is to pass the ball. He's not going to go up and score. So it becomes a one-dimensional player off the pick and roll because if you pass it to him, now granted he's hit some open shooters, but there's not 2 options. If he shoots or does a little floater, 9.9999 out of 10 times, he's going to miss it. He's going to miss that shot. It's not going to go in, and it's going to look brutal as well.
So my question is, why did the ball go to Rudy Gobert on the roll at the free throw line?
Because he was open. Because they leave him open.
Well, why do they leave him open?
Because
he can't score. So don't pass him the ball.
Exactly.
So don't give him the ball there. Swing to somewhere else. Let Rudy get under the hoop or lob dunk. That's all Rudy can do. He lob dunks or standing dunks. If it's anything other than that, don't give him the ball. Like that's what they want you to do. They're leaving him open for a reason because they're baiting you to throw the ball there. You have to be a smarter basketball player, not give him there or wait a tick until he's in the restricted area and then give him the ball.
But there's got to be a player out there that the Wolves can get relatively on the cheap. I'm not even saying I'm not even saying an Anthony Davis. I'm saying there's got to be a big man that the Wolves can get that's a pick and roll partner that can get the ball at the free throw line and have the ability to just put up a little jump hook or floater. There's got to be someone out in the NBA, the National Basketball Association, the greatest basketball league in the world. There's got to be someone the Wolves can get to, and he doesn't even have to hit every shot. He's just got to be a threat to hit
How
the
about
shot.
Naz Reid?
But that's not his game. Naz is more of a slasher than anything.
Well, we got what we have. Like, it's not like we can just pick a 7-footer off a tree right now. Like, this is the roster. You know, there's nobody in the G League. There's nobody that's just floundering around that is an NBA talent that another team just hasn't found. So
what about like a Nick Claxton?
I mean, but he's on a team. I know
you trade for him.
He's also pretty terrible offensively too.
Okay.
Like, I think he's averaging probably 8 points a game. Like, he's kind of a dunk or nothing type guy too. It's a really bad dilemma.
What about Yusef Nurkic?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, but how are we going to get him?
Trade somebody.
Sure. Let's do it.
Yeah. I'm just saying there's got to be a better option than Anthony Edwards getting doubled, drop it off to Rudy, and Rudy fumbling the ball away or chucking the ball off the backboard or something like that.
I would say swing the ball around the perimeter. That's what I think the option would be. All
right. I think we'll leave it there. Chris, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, we got to get on a win streak.
Absolutely. And we have the Luka-less Mavericks tomorrow. It's a big game. It's on, I believe, ESPN. It's Rivals Week, so get excited. And this is the Running with the Timberwolves podcast on the Believe Sports Network. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube and give us a 5-star rating or Spotify or Apple. And also make sure to check out Underdog Fantasy. And as always, go Wolves.